29th of 2019 that I realized I had a huge problem. The deal that I needed to hit quota, and not just quota, but accelerators, that deal was not going to close. The deal was with Iowa Hospital Association, and you see their beautiful lobby here on the slide that I never got to visit because I didn't close that deal. It was not their fault. The reason it ended closed loss was completely my fault, and here's what happened. They absolutely needed my product. They had a compelling event. They had a large project where it made complete sense for us to expand our footprint into that account. And best of all, I had a champion, and I mean a true champion. Like, she stuck her neck out. She taught me how to, I'm like, who was who in the organization, what they needed, all the technical stuff. Like, she was a true champion. The problem was I was single threaded with that champion. This is Anna. She was their analytics director. And the reason I was single threaded was she was such a strong champion. She was a huge advocate for the product. She was a product group user in her state. And her title had director in it, which was way better than like the analysts or the admins that I usually got stuck with, right? She was amazing. Plus, she had an active project where, again, it made complete sense for us to expand our footprint. I believed the deal was rock solid. I believed that from January 1st all the way to October 29th when they signed with my competitor. And the reason the whole thing crumbled on October 29th was that my competitor had multi-threaded. He had gone above my champion, the VP to the CEO. He tied the use case for expanding his footprint to multiple C-level priorities. He, and not the least of which of those priorities, was do more with less, because they were a nonprofit after all, and his product was significantly cheaper than mine, all of which, of course, sealed the fate of the deal in October. And while that $112,891 deal died that day, something much bigger was born. And that commitment was to never again lose a deal solely because I was single-threaded. That commitment actually led me to closing over a $700,000 deal less than a year later. But I'll tell you that story in a minute, because I don't think I'm alone with my single threading issue, right? So raise your hand if you have ever lost a deal where there was a solid use case, a compelling event, a great champion, or all three. Thank you, hand raisers, for raising your hands. The rest of you are liars. Let's play a guessing game. What percentage of B2B deals do you think are single-threaded? According to LinkedIn, over 78% of deals are single-threaded. And only 7% of deals have multi-threading with their 6 or more contacts. So thank you, LinkedIn, for helping us all feel better. But hopefully we all agree that what would make us feel even better is to never again lose a deal solely because we're being single-threaded. So that's why we're here. But okay, devil's advocate, this is sales kickoff. There's a lot of skills that we could talk about, right? Why multi-threading? Some of you have seen the P Club course, and you know, hopefully remember from there, that multi-threading significantly increases our win rate. Multi-threading increases our win rate by about 34%. And I don't know about you, but I will do literally anything that is legal to increase my win rate by that much. Okay, so we know that multi-threading works, but we need to go a level deeper. Why does it work? Because Forbes says that over 70% of major change initiatives in any organization fails. Who is responsible for bringing in those change initiatives? It's executives. And no executive wants their name tied by themselves to a losing project, right? They don't want to fail alone. The Jolt effect talks about that no one person's name is attached to the status quo, right? If something sucks in an organization, that's the status quo. It's the way it always has been. That's the way anybody remembers. No one person's name. It's no one person's fault. But if we suddenly try to transform the organization, if we bring in a new project, if we rip and replace technology, somebody's name is attached to that. Somebody's butt is on the line if that thing fails. And executives don't want to be the only butt on the line, right? So that's why multi-threading increases our win rate. It's because it decreases the risk for anybody who's saying we should do this thing, right? And we as salespeople are just like the downstream beneficiaries of that, right? And that's great. It's a win-win, right? So when we multi-thread, we not only help ourselves, but we actually help our champions and executive buyers with 2 problems. We help them solve the business problem they have with which is hopefully what our product is doing, and we are helping solve a risk problem for them, which they inherit every time they try to buy something. That's why we're talking about multi-threading 2.0. What is involved? What do I mean by multi-threading 2.0? A couple things. We need to get around gatekeepers, right? We all have to deal with them. We need to get more strategic, and then we need to give more value. So my promise today, as we get into all of this, is one thing, that you will leave here today with at least one thing that can significantly impact your biggest deals. I don't know what that's going to be. We're going to go over a number of things. So be listening for that. And if you want to write it down so you don't forget it, awesome. If you hear things that you've already heard or that you don't need to know, that will happen. That's for somebody else. Another important thing to remember about this session and then the session that immediately follows is this is kind of whenever you were in college, you had like the bio and then bio lab, chemistry and then chem lab. This is like the class session. And then the next one is like the lab session. So I'm going to talk through some concepts and some how-tos, and I'm going to show you some resources. And then all of them will be available to you like in the lab session. So you'll be able to work hands-on with that immediately, right? So class time versus lab time. Hopefully this becomes less frustrating because one of my biggest pet peeves is having sat in many SKOs is hearing something that I'm super excited about and I want to use it and then being rushed like to the next thing. And then you get back to your desk and you're just completely slammed. So class time, lab time. So as we go through today, pick a concept and hopefully pick a deal that you can think about applying these to as we go through. Okay, so first thing with multi-threading is we need to get around gatekeepers. Gatekeepers are a huge obstacle to multi-threading. Sometimes they are a huge obstacle to even getting a deal started. And this has happened to us all when we feel trapped by lower level contacts. Raise your hand if you can think of an account right now where you are stuck with someone in HR or someone in IT. They might see a clear need. They may even love Adobe, but they have no idea what the strategic priorities of their organization are. No one is stuck. Oh, okay. That happens to all of us, right? And these folks in these positions, they definitely want to be gatekeepers. That's like, it makes them feel important. They want to protect their boss's time. There's lots of good reasons, but it doesn't really help us and it doesn't help them either. We've all been there. So to work around gatekeepers without losing the relationship, there are a couple of methods that I have found work, and two of them are what I call the Bart Simpson and the Bye Felicia. So this is perhaps the most unorthodox SKO advice anyone is giving, and you're welcome. Okay, the first one is the Bart Simpson, which is a code name for plausible deniability. Okay, so this can work no matter what your role is, whether you are an SDR who's reaching out to additional contacts in the org, whether you are an account manager contacting new departments, and CSM going wider in account. Anybody can use this. So this is when we have a lower level contact, but we really value that relationship. Like this would have been me, had I been smart, this would have been me with Anna, right? She was not a VP or a C level. I needed to work above her, but I really valued that relationship and I didn't want to step on her toes. I didn't want to make her feel like she wasn't valued. In that case, what we can do is we can ghostwrite an email or a text for our boss to send to the executive in the client account, right? Our boss then sends that note to the executive in the client account. We are not on that thread. That is what gives us plausible deniability. Because then if that gatekeeping contact comes back to us and says, my boss just got an email from your boss and they didn't appreciate that, right? Then this is what we can say. Again, if you guys have seen the P Club thing, I don't like to say like, here's something you can do without saying like exactly a way to do it. So this is actually what I have said before. Like, oh, wow, that seems like that email came as a surprise. And I'm sure you understand that just like you don't have full control over everything your boss does, I certainly don't have full control over everything my boss does. But it's just part of the KPIs that we're measured on here at Adobe that our executives add value to other executives. So I'm sure that's why you saw that. We have the plausible deniability, and we also can make it a little bit of a lighter moment, right? Like, I don't have control over everything my boss does. I'm sure you probably don't either. But also notice what we're not doing. We are not apologizing for that email going out. We are not saying it won't happen again. In fact, we're kind of saying it will happen again, right? Like, this is part of what we're measured on. But we can apologize that that it was a surprise, right? We can we can be therapists, right? Like, we can acknowledge, like, wow, that sounds like that was surprising, okay? Like, we can do that. We can validate the feelings. Now, the second one, the Bye Felicia, is for a contact that is being super gatekeepy. And you don't necessarily need to preserve so much you want to preserve the relationship, but it's not warm and fuzzy to begin with. And again, you can use this as an SDR, AM, CSM. And again, same situation. You are ghostwriting a message for your leader to send to the leader of your target account. That message goes out, you're not on the thread, and then you get my boss got an email from your boss called my boss. Okay, so in both cases, we are not apologizing, right? But again, we talk about the KPIs. So this is one way we can talk about it. So part of the KPIs here at Adobe to add value for executives. And also this can be, sometimes gatekeepers want to be CC'd on emails. So this is assuming that the gatekeeper sometimes the boss will CC them, right? So if they're CC'd on the email, and that's how they know they got it. They say, I got an email and it was from my boss got it. So that's when we can say, hey, you know what? I totally understand. We all get like 200 emails a day. It's so annoying. We can just take you off the thread. no problem, right? Like that changes the conversation because they're like, whoa, you might send that without me knowing about it. Like again, it intimates like this is still going to happen. You don't necessarily have to know about it. Like you don't have to be on the thread. Or if your boss didn't include you and they're upset that you sent the email or the email got sent, you say, you know what, we all get 100 emails. I know that's annoying. That's probably why you weren't on the thread, right? There are ways that we can deal with this that is not going to wreck the relationship. And of course, this is how emails can look. If you are having this conversation like on a Zoom call or in person, then we just simply explain why it happened. We don't apologize, and then we just change the subject to whatever the subject of the meeting is, right? We just move on. Somebody at Adobe who is doing a great job of aligning executives with executives is Eric. And he has been highlighted by your leadership as somebody who understands the importance of executive to executive communication. And apparently, he uses this great illustration of showing how bringing our executives into a deal can have the unique effect of getting us to power faster and better. So, if you need advice on specifically how to do this or who's doing it well at Adobe, get in touch with Eric. So, RIP your DMs. But bottom line is, I want to encourage you, don't be afraid of executive alignment. Don't be afraid of having your boss reach out above where you are, especially in deals where you have contacts acting as gatekeepers. My mentor gave me one specific phrase in 2019 that I have never forgotten. And here's the phrase, I'm going to give it to you. Real deals aren't fragile. Just like in any relationship, whether it's with your partner, whether it's with your neighbor, whether it's with your friend, if you have a decent relationship, feathers can get a little ruffled, but it doesn't wreck it. Right? Like they might not love it, but if it's a real deal, if one email or one text or one phone call kills a deal, that wasn't a deal anyway, right? So that's a couple of ways to work kind of around gatekeeping. How do we make our conversation more strategic? How do we have less product conversation, more problem-focused conversation? And I get it that it can be especially hard to scale strategic communication across 90 accounts, especially because if you're not working with just a specific industry or just a specific vertical, like that can be hard. But luckily, it has never been easier to scale communication whenever we use LLMs, right? We can use those to scale. Raise your hand if after this SKO you hope to never hear the word scale. It's never been easier to multiply effort with LLMs. Okay, so whether you're using ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you're using, we can easily use technology to do the initial research to help us get more strategic. And that includes coming with a point of view. Now, for point of view, that can include, we want to include a bunch of things. We want to look at what has the corporate news been? Has their leader been on any podcasts? What's going on? If they had any mergers, acquisitions? What are the analysts saying if they're a public company? All sorts of things. But this exact layout, which I know is a bit difficult to see, but you guys are going to get to play with this because the prompt that created this takes about 2 minutes. And this is this point of view is actually for a company called Tallgrass, which is an oil and gas company. And this was developed by an enterprise seller at Salesforce that I was working with. This is the point of view that he used to get a deal started with the CIO of this company, right? And I have multiple folks that I'm working with. Like this has coming with a point of view, right? Helps get the deal started. Like Christine was saying, we don't just ask customers, well, what keeps you up at night? We come with an idea of this might be keeping you up at night, right? And LLMs make that super easy to do. So I'm going to tell you about the 3 prompts that I have for you. It will enable you to do like the work of getting a point of view in just a couple of minutes. And remember, you're going to get to play with that in the lab time versus the class time. So the first prompt is for a point of view for the account. That's what I just showed you, like across the whole account. That's what the leaders will probably care about. But of course, if you remember from P Club, we can't just deal with executives in the account. They're not the only ones that matter. And different groups care about different things. And so we have end users. Does this help me do my job easier, faster, better? Managers of end users care about, does this help my team with a metric that we are measured on? And then executives care about, does this help us meet our goals, lower our risk? We need to address all of those. And just doing that from a single point of view, like if we talk about risk and market share, we kind of lose end users, right? They want to know about like the direct line to like products and functionality. How do you make my day better? How do you help me do this faster? Because they're already doing 3 people's jobs. So the big prompts are, one is just the entire point of view for the entire account. The second prompt is more around above the line messaging, like for executives. The prompt is going to help you do is across all the different departments that you sell into, it's going to help you come up with executive messaging for multiple different departments, right? It's one thing to look at company news or see what's happening in a 10K and then know how to speak about that directly to legal, right? Directly to HR, directly to IT. You're like, yeah, I get it. They got a competitor that's like eating them up in the market, but like, how am I supposed to talk to IT about that? We need to be able to draw a direct line to multiple different departments, not just a single stakeholder. So we're going to work with a prompt for that. Okay. And of course, we cannot forget about the end users, right? We need messaging for those because end users don't mean not important. Because as we all know, like end users can't say yes on their own. They're not signing anything for anybody, but they can definitely say no on their own, right? We need to address their concerns. We need to bring them in and make them part of evaluation. They definitely need to be part of multi-threading. And again, the prompt is going to help across multiple different departments, but also across multiple different things. What do they care about? How do they spend their time? What are the problems they face? And you'll be able to see that with the prompt like all in one spot. And again, if creating all of these different messages for all these different groups, all these different departments, hopefully that doesn't seem overwhelming. You get the prompt. I don't think it will. But again, fear not, the prompts are going to help with that. I would never suggest what to do without also hopefully giving you a way of like how to do it. If you want to know another of your peers who has been highlighted for doing this well, Anandita is apparently a whiz at engaging executives and doing executive proposals that speak to broader business goals. So that is an amazing skill to have in sales. So go find her, see what's working for her here at Adobe. And also, yeah, I apologize for your DMs. Okay, last of the three elements when we talk about multi-threading 2.0, we talk about giving more value because multi-threading at its best should absolutely go beyond just recapping company news or just recapping meetings and informing. Ideally, as we multi-thread, we should be influencing our customers' thought process. How do we do that with multi-threading? The answer is we help our buyers answer 5 unspoken questions. Any purchase at all, a buyer has 5 unspoken questions. And to prove to you that this is how people make buying decisions, I'm going to ask you to think about the last trip you took, whether it was family trip, bachelorette party, bachelor party, girls trip, wherever you went. In order for that group trip to kind of make it out of that group chat, you had to answer 5 questions. So let's think about this. Let's say that after SKO, we need a break and we are going to Cabo. Okay. Number one is in order for us to start looking at Airbnbs or hotels, we have to decide, do I have a goal that I need help with? We've decided to take a trip. We've already decided that. Yeah, I have a goal. I want to get the heck out of here. Okay. That's question 1. Question 2 is, okay, what's out there to solve my problem? So that's where we decide, do I want a hotel? Do I want an Airbnb? Like what's out there to solve my problem? Then we start looking at we can start scrolling through Airbnb. Question 3, what do we really need? That's where we start filtering Airbnb, right? Like that's where we decide what our non-negotiables are. Maybe it's how many bedrooms we need. Maybe it's how many bathrooms we need. Maybe it's distance to the beach. Whatever our non-negotiables are, that's the filters that we're setting up as we're looking for the right place for this trip. And then question 4, before we press that button to book, we have to decide. We have one more thought of, is this juice really worth the squeeze? Like, do I really want to take this trip with these people? Do I really want to spend this money? Okay. And then the last question 5 is, how does this get done, right? What needs to happen after this? Once we push book, that's definitely what we want to know. We want to know, when can we check in? Where do we find the keys? Where are the directions for the hot tub? We want to know, how does this get done? Those 5 questions, even for a trip that is going to cost us a couple hundred or maybe a couple $1,000, these are roughly what we want to know. Our customers are going to spend thousands, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of dollars with us. Why would they not want to know these same things? I'll submit to you that this is the minimum of the questions that they're asking themselves as they're going through a buying process. So for those of us now wondering how or why we would work in the answers to these questions whenever we are multi-threading, right? When we're sending messaging back and forth, that answer comes from the good folks at Gartner. You didn't think I was just going to give it to you, right? Like, some of you know I was a teacher, and if you've ever had a teacher, you know that teachers always come up with pop quizzes as like the most unexpected time. So pop quiz, according to Gartner, how much time do buyers spend with you as an individual seller at any point during the sales cycle? Their cumulative time during the sales cycle, how much time is spent with you as an individual seller? 95% of the sales process happens when they are not talking to us, right? Whether that's in person, whether that's on Zoom, 95% of the time they are considering our thing. It's not when we're in the room, which kind of makes sense, right? I mean, like we do a demo one week, we maybe have the next meeting with them the next week or two. They're meeting a lot. They're emailing and DMing a lot in between between there. 95% of this process is happening without us. And so then that's when we realize that what we are communicating during that 95% of the time that they're not speaking with us, that's the majority of the sales process. So then the question becomes, what can we do? What can we say? What can we send that adds value in that 95% of the time, right? And that's where we can use these 5 unspoken questions, right? Because I don't know if you're like me, but especially early on in my sales career, I wanted to add value, right? Like I wanted to be like a thought partner and like a strategic partner, but you're like, what the hell can I send them that adds value? Like, here's a podcast I listened to that made me think of you. Like, right? Like, what can I do that's really going to be something that adds value? And that's where the 5 unspoken questions come in, because every person on the buying committee has these questions and they're going to be answering them in different ways. And we are navigating, the buying committees have never been more complex than they are now. And different members of the buying committee come in and out of the process at different times, right? And so I made this handy dandy chart for us because as we look across the questions that are happening during the buying process, like, do we actually have something that we need help with? What's out there to solve the problem? What do we really need this to do? Is this juice worth the squeeze? And then what happens next? How does this get done? Different people get brought in and different people play more important roles at different times during that process, right? So end users are involved usually around the evaluation time, right? Or around like demos. What do we need this to do? What's out there to solve the problem? Executives maybe not so much. So the buying committee kind of flexes and shifts as we move along that decision-making process, okay? So it makes sense to think through who is involved at each stage and what might add value for them at each particular stage. So if you look at, and this writing is really small, so I'm going to jump over here. Again, because I never want to leave you like with this idea of like, well, this is an idea of what you can do. Let's talk about how you can actually do it. So at the bottom, I have some suggested resources for each individual question, for each buying question. And anything you see underlined here, when you get this actual chart, that's a link to a resource that you can use instantly, start personalizing for your customers right there. One of the best things that we can send during this time is something that helps them evaluate the cost of inaction. And cost of inaction, like I have understood this as a concept as a seller for a while, but it can be very, very hard to quantify and help folks actually think through what it is. And this is an article that you'll get the link for that provides one of my favorite examples. It basically says that if I'm trying to sell you a $100 foldable raincoat that can fit in your purse or backpack, and I say to you, this is my $100 raincoat. It's really small. It can fit in your purse or backpack. You are 10 times less likely to get wet if you use this portable raincoat. That's kind of boring. And also, I agree. If I have a raincoat, I'm less likely to get wet. Like, I understand. That's different than saying, hey, you live in Chicago. There are 100 rainy days a year. On your commute to work, if you don't have a raincoat with you, you might decide to take an Uber. And whenever it rains in Chicago, that might be surge pricing. And so even if you only take an Uber half of those rainy days and you pay $50 surge pricing, that's $2,500. Suddenly, our $100 raincoat looks really reasonable, right? Because we have helped compare what the cost of action is to the cost of inaction. When we help folks define the literal cost of inaction, that can be a huge catalyst for executives to act. This chart is what helped a seller I worked with this year close a $600K deal and get to P Club. In this deal, she was selling technology to a casino that would help them do quick drug testing for employees. The funny thing, the amazing thing about this deal is she closed this deal in September. The casino will not open until April. They spent $600,000 with her for a casino that's not even open yet. Why did they do that? Well, we sat down and she said, okay, here's my product. It allows them to do drug testing kits. It's super fast. They can tell whether this person is even eligible to be hired, and they can do it really fast. That's the product, right? Like that's the feature. But what did that mean for the casino? So I said, okay, well, let's figure out how many employees do they have to hire? They had to hire 2,000 employees. So we thought through, well, if they, in September, if they're let's say they go through and they hire these folks, but they don't drug test them yet. They're going to have to, at some point, train these folks, and they're going to have to drug test them again. If they do that and they find out all of these people are not eligible to work, then they have to go through that entire cost of hire. So then we went to ChatGPT and said, how much does it cost to hire a casino employee? And it said, well, there's pit bosses and there's waitresses. And so we did all the averages and we found out on average $4,000 cost to hire per employee. So we said, okay, without our product, you may have to actually hire 3,000 people because you won't know if any of them are actually eligible to work. You know what the delta is between hiring 2,000 and 3,000 people? It's $4 million. So all of a sudden, her $600,000 product looks far less expensive than their $4 million problem. This is why cost of inaction is so powerful. It's not easy. Like, we have to do the work. In my opinion, one of the biggest jobs of salespeople is to reduce friction in a deal. And reducing friction can sometimes mean connecting dots, not assuming that our customers or executives can or will connect dots on their own. Casino hadn't done this math. She did the math. And then they signed. The Adobe signed. This cost of inaction, it wasn't this product, but this customer or this rep that I coached, January 6th, sent me this. It's, hey, I just closed the biggest deal ever in my career, $2.2 million. I used cost of inaction and in particular, a visual graph that showed what their actual cost was of starting now versus starting later. Like, cost of inaction is incredibly powerful when executives at the end or near end of a deal are weighing, do I really want to do this? Do we really have to do this? They have 1,000 fires they are trying to put out. This can elevate whatever fire we are solving to the hottest fire. They will frequently not do this on their own. Now the question, especially when we're thinking that deeply, how can we scale this? Scaling is important, right? You guys have like 90 plus accounts, right? So like we have to think about how can you actually, if you're going to do a motion like that, how can you actually scale? Again, that's why there are links in this chart. They're going to take you to every single resource I mentioned, including cost of inaction, are going to take you through that, and you're going to get to do that in the lab time. Okay, so and whenever you see your enablement leaders, thank them for the wisdom of building in application time immediately after something that you're learning. Not everyone does that, and it's an amazing gift to you. All right, so that's multi-threading 3.0. We're getting around gatekeepers, we are getting more strategic, and we are giving more value. So what kind of results can that deliver? I promised you this story at the beginning. Exactly 9 months to the day of when I lost that deal with Iowa Hospital Association, that $112,891 deal. I won this deal $717,000. It was multi-threaded at 3 levels. The sales cycle was one of the fastest and smoothest of my career. Why do I tell you this? And it's only 2 reasons. The first is definitely not to brag, because ask me about the $13.7 million deal that I lost the first year of my career. Sales humbles us all. The reason I tell you this is to show you the power of multi-threading, not only to get deals done, but to get deals grown, to get deals larger. And reason number 2 is, if I can do it, you can definitely do it. You guys have amazing resources. You can absolutely do it. So go into the lab, right? Lab time's coming up as promised. Hopefully you are fired up for it. Thank you for letting me come and spend some time with you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for participating. So enjoy getting to know this group. And I'm so excited for what's ahead for you. And I will turn it back over to your lovely enablement team.
Thank you so much, Kristen. One more big, warm round of applause for Kristen. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Coming to us all the way from Texas. Thank you so much.